So guys, so far we have discussed module one. We have discussed, right, what is web application development, what is modern web application development, what is the difference between traditional and SPA application development, and how Angular fit into our SPA application development. We have also discussed the environment setup, so how to install Node.js, how to install NPM, how to install Angular CLI, how to install Visual Studio Code, right, and how you can make sure everything is up and running by creating some simple application. We have also tested the same. Then we have also take two sessions to make you understand the fundamental concept of TypeScript. So what is data type, what is variable, what is class, what is interface, how to implement inheritance, how to implement the composition, generic set of polynomials. All these things we have discussed, right? We have discussed this thing, right? Uh, Again, we have also discussed this thing by taking some simple application, not using Angular, but directly how you can develop this thing using TypeScript. So using TypeScript language, we have discussed this thing. Then we have also discussed, right, how our Angular application bootstrap. So what is the process, right? How the index.html file is going to be rendered, how it is internally calling the main.ts files, how the main.ts file going to bootstrap our application, as part of the bootstrap process, how it is going to load the configuration file. All these things we have discussed in our previous session. So from today, we are going to start our module 2. So module 2 is going to basically deal with the three important piece of a component. Right? You can consider three important building blocks we are going to learn. What are these? One is component, another one is directives, another one is a pipes. So component directives and pipes, that's what we are going to discuss in detail in module 2. So you can consider from today onwards only, we are going to start our actual Angular concept. So whatever so far we have discussed, that is module 1, it is nothing but here you can consider the introduction sessions only. Now the main sessions are going to be start. Sir, what do you mean by main session? Main session means now whatever component, template, binding, directive, pipes, whatever we are going to develop, we will understand the things, right? Step by step. Every piece of code, whatever we are going to write, what is the meaning of that code, how the things are happening behind the scene. Those things also we are going to discuss. So today we are going to start our component session. As part of a component, we are also going to learn templates. We are also going to learn data binding. As part of a data binding, right? As part of data binding, we are going to learn many different kind of a data bindings like property binding, or what I can say, attribute binding, interpolation, event binding, style binding, class binding, two-way data binding, all these things we are going to discuss. In template, we are also going to discuss what is inline template, what is outline external template. Then we are also going to discuss how our component is going to be bound with the what I can say internal HTML file by using some kind of a data binding technique. All these things we are going to discuss one by one. So today we are going to start our chapter 5, that is going to be the component and the template. So all the related concepts, right? A template and Angular components, we are going to discuss. I think I will take 2 to 3 sessions to make you understand this session concept, right? Component and template. So let us start today's session. First of all, we are going to discuss Angular components fundamental. Then we will move toward Angular decorators. Then we will move toward templates. Then we will discuss data binding. Then we are going to discuss nested component, and then finally we will complete with our component life cycle. So that is what I have prepared. So let's start with the fundamental concept of a component. See, whenever you are developing any Angular application, that application is nothing but built using a list of a components. So basically, you can say component Angular application is equivalent to a number of components. Where what is component? Now this is the smallest and most important part of our Angular application. So every screen, whatever we are going to develop, for each screen, we are going to have a separate component. For example, if we are developing one a real-time application, then we can have a header, we can have a footer, we can have a sidebar. We are going to have different kind of a form, different kind of a card, different kind of a layout, right? Many things are going to be there. Then for each part, for each of this right section, we are going to have a component. So basically component means it is the heart of our Angular application you can consider. So now what we are going to learn, we will understand first of all what is Angular component, why components are the foundation of our Angular application, what exactly a template, and how our TypeScript class is connected with the template class. We'll understand the core building, right? We'll also understand what are the three different components, or you can say what are the three parts that what we combine together create our Angular component, like the component class, template, and the decorator. So these three things we'll understand. We'll understand also how to create a component using Angular CLI. So let us first understand what is component. So before proceeding and understanding and making you understand what is component, can anybody tell me what is component as per your experience?
It's a reusable code that we can use.
Reusable?
Like
Reusable piece of
reusable block
code.
of code that we can use in
So if you are going to answer in this way, reusable block of code in the interview, do you think that the interviewer is going to select you?
Sir, component.
Reusable custom HTML tag.
No, that is not the correct answer.
Component is a
See,
class which is decorated by using a component decorator, right?
yes. So basically, a component in Angular is nothing but a class. If you are using JavaScript, that is fine. If you are using TypeScript, also fine. So a component is a decorator, a component is a TypeScript class. So for example, if you created any, right, what I can say filter, right, any custom filter if you create, so then in C# or in ASP.NET Core, that filter might be right inherited from some class. For example, if you are creating any custom data annotation attribute, so that a class is going to be inherited from the attribute class. Similarly, whenever a class is decorated with @ component decorator, then only we can tell that class as a component class. What exactly this component class doing internally? See, technically it is a class decorated with the @component director. That is a technical definition. What internally it is doing? Now this component class tells the Angular, hey Mr. Angular, when this component rendered, when this component is being used, so please display this HTML. So what HTML to be rendered in the UI, that what the component is going to tell to the Angular. For that particular HTML, if it needs some data, then please use this data what I'm defining here within the component class. So while defining the HTML, if it needs some right CSS classes, then please use this CSS class file. And more importantly, use this component class when someone use this custom tag in the HTML. So basically, you have to remember four things, right? So what are the things? Now, first of all, it is a TypeScript class. So when I'm saying class, class means what? It can contains both logic and behavior. If I'm talking about interface, then interface can only define the same, only define the method signature, but no logic. So when I'm saying it is a class means what? It can contain both logic and data. So logic and data means what? Now it can define some properties, right? Which you can use within the HTML file. How to use, I will show you. It can also define some method where you can implement your business logic. For example, you can provide, if it is a e-commerce application, you can provide one method for calculate total, apply coupon, right? So like this, you can define some method. Also, you can define some variable, right, which is going to context the data. For example, what is the customer name? What is the order ID? What is the payment amount? What is the order amount? For holding this, you need some variable. And using this variable, you can implement some logic, right? So technically, it is going to contain some properties as well as it is going to contain some method where you can write the logic. So basically, it is a class which is going to contain both logic and data. So this component class also, right? See, if I'm creating a class, so it is a simple TypeScript class. But this class will become a component class when this class is decorated with this @component director. If the class is decorated with this @component director, then that class will become a component class. Sir, what is director? We'll discuss in the next session what are the different kind of a director. We'll discuss in some time. So, but for now, just remember what is component decorator means. Now, it is a metadata. So basically, this component decorator provides some metadata to the Angular. So what do you mean by metadata? Metadata means additional information. So what additional information you need for this template class? So that additional information, this component right decorator will give to the Angular class. So using the class, you can only define the logic and the data. But where this logic and the data is going to be used, so that information is going to be defined by this component decorator class. So this component decorator class will tell the information, will tell the Angular framework, hey, Mr. Framework. So this component class is associated with this custom HTML tag. This component class is associated with this right HTML file. This component class is associated with this custom style sheets. So this custom style sheets, the HTML file that is associated with this component class, the selector that is going to be used right by the HTML file for this particular component. So these informations are going to be provided by component decorator. It will provide this information to whom? To the Angular framework. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
So basically, it contains the UI template where the user sees, right? That UI that can be seen by the user. That logic where you can implement your business logic, right? The data and behavior, and it also contains the metadata. So this will tell and how this class is going to be linked with the other, right? So now see, there's one more thing you have to remember. This thing, if you are taking, if you take the real-time example, layman example, then think Angular application is the shopping mall. So if you take any right good shopping mall, if you consider that shopping mall is your Angular application, then that mall is one large place, but it is made up of many independent shops, right? So different shop is going to be there within the shopping mall. Then each shop has its own design, so that looks and feels, that rules, regulation, purpose of that shop is going to vary from one shop to another. But yet together they form the complete mall. Similarly, in our Angular application, this mall is nothing but your application, and each shop is going to be a component. Clear? Clear?
Yes.
Right? So why I'm giving? Because you can easily understand. So if my Angular application is the shopping mall, then within the shopping mall, each shop is going to be one independent component. So each component purpose is different, that looks is different, that rules and regulation is going to be different. So now once you understand component technically, right, I will show you how to create component, how to create class. So but before that, what I need to understand, we need to understand some theoretical concepts. So, right. So once you understand component, then we need to understand the template. So what is template? Now template is the HTML view of the Angular component. So basically what I'm saying, now I'm saying a component is a class, right? And this class contains some data and logic. So this is content, data and logic. But each component class is decorated with one decorator. So what is that decorator? That component decorator, right? So this component decorator gives multiple information. So what are the information it provides? Now what is the HTML, custom HTML tag, right? Custom HTML tag for this component. What is the HTML file that is going to be used, right? I mean that is associated with this. Then also it is going to contain the associated CSS file, right? So this HTML file, it is nothing but your template. So technically, this is the template. This custom HTML tag, this is going to be your selector. Right? I will explain this thing again. And this CSS file means these are going to be style sheets. Right. So now what I need to understand, this HTML file or a template. So what is this template? So template means it is the HTML file. So as I'm saying, it is the HTML file means it is going to render the UI part of your Angular application. Right. So a template is the HTML view of an Angular component what it defines, now it defines the structure and the layout of what the user sees in the browser. So as a user, when you open the application, what you are seeing, that is nothing but the template, and that template is also going to be associated with the component. So however, right, you have to remember one important thing: the template what we are seeing, right, what we are going to create, these are not static templates. So these are not static template, they are a dynamic template. Sir, what do you mean by dynamic template? Dynamic template means they are not going to store some static data. Every time you run the application, you will see the same data. No, that is not the case. So dynamic template means what? Dynamically they are going to render the data. If you are opening the application, it will show you your profile information. If someone else right open the application, you will see his profile information. Again, if I'm updating my profile data, that updated data I'm going to see. That means it is going to render the dynamic HTML template for your application. Right? Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what is template? Template is going to show the UI part of the application. Then what is the class? Class is going to hold the data and behavior. So when I'm saying behavior, behavior means method where you can write the logic. And Angular, what is the responsibility of Angular? Now it connects the template and the class, right? How? Now based on the connect the class, right, with the help of a decorator. With the help of a component decorator. I will show you all this thing, right, practically one more time. Clear? So this decorator is there. That decorator is going to be decorated with this component class, and this decorator will tell the framework, right, that please, connect this template with this component class, right? So now, what is a template? Now, a template is the HTML view of an Angular application. It defines the structure and layout what the user sees in the browser, right? So you can consider this, right? So this is how that template is going to be now. So we have understand that we are going to have a component class where we define the data and logic, and we are also having one template, right? A template means it is the HTML file. Clear? That is going to be your HTML file. So now, how these files are going to be, how it will connect, right? How our Angular framework connect this template with this particular HTML file. That's what we need to understand. See, the Angular data binding techniques are there, right? So in Angular, there is something called a data binding techniques, and using that data binding techniques, the Angular framework connect, right? The Angular framework connect our component with the template class. So basically, if anyone having any idea, right, related to interpolation data binding, property data binding, attribute data binding, style data binding, class data binding, right, event data binding, ng model two-way data binding, right? So different data binding techniques are there. Using those techniques, right, what I can do, I can read the data and I can update the data. So how we are going to do, what are the different data binding, all these things we are going to discuss, but just remember how the template connects to the Angular application by using the data binding concept, right? So how? Now, first of all, it display values in the right in the component class, right? Then it can respond to user actions and it can update automatically. So what exactly it means? No. To understand this thing, let us try to understand. Let assume this is going to be my component class. So in the component class, I defined one variable called message, and this is my template UI. So this template UI, right, will read the value, right? Once the HTML, right, once it parse this template, then it defined that this is a message property, and this template is already framework no is associated with this component. So the framework going to check, right, whatever the property we defined here, is that property available within my template, sorry, available within my component, yes, available. Then whatever the value it is there, right, having this message variable, that is going to be rendered here. And this concept is called interpolation data binding. So this concept, what I'm using here, this is interpolation data binding techniques. Using this binding, it will read the corresponding value of this interpolation from the corresponding component class. So this is how the component class, right, read the data from the template. But again, guys, remember, it is not one-way direction. So don't consider that it can only read the data from here. It is also possible that I can define some button here. Once the user clicks on the button, I can define some method here within my component class. That method is going to be executed. It is also possible that, right, for example, first when the user enter, value is Angular, welcome to Angular. Later on, I change this value to welcome to Angular, welcome to my Angular application. Automatically, that updated value is going to be put by this component to the template. So all these things are going to be happening. So it is display values defined in the component class. So whatever the value defined, that is going to be displayed by the template. It responds to user action. So if you provide any input changes, radio button changes, button click event, right? Whenever you make some action within the view, it also responds. That this component class also going to respond. It automatically update. For example, if you change this property value to something else, that updated value it is going to display in the UI. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. So now we need to understand the structure of the component class. So as I mentioned already, component class is a combination of three things. What are the things? First of all, you need to define a TypeScript class. That class must be decorated with the component decorator. And for this component, you should have defined one HTML file. And within this decorator, you can provide the configuration related to the HTML file. So basically, component is the combination of three things. So now try to understand what is the use of a class. Within the class, I can define my data and the logic. Class is going to contain the data and the logic. Whatever the variable you want to declare, you can define. Whatever the function you want to define, right, implement, you can implement. So class is going to be the brain of your application. So template means what? Template is nothing but your face of the application. So what the user sees in the UI. So how the button should looks in the UI. What should be the size? What should be the color combination? How you are going to represent your user interface. That is what going to be defined by the template. And yes, these template are dynamic so that they can also read the data and the logic, whatever you defined within the component class. And this decorator, it is nothing but the instruction set. So what do you mean by instruction set? Now he is going to tell the Angular framework, yes, this is a component class. This class is associated with this particular template. The corresponding CSS is available within that CSS file. And this component class is associated with this particular selector. Selector means a particular HTML tag. If you find that particular custom HTML tag within the HTML, please render this right component. And for this component, this is the associated template. So please replace that HTML, right, custom HTML tag with this HTML file. And if in case you need some data, right, dynamic data within that HTML file, please read from this component class, right? So the three things that what it is going to contain. One class where you can write the data and the logic. Template, it is the HTML. Decorator means it is going to give the metadata or you can say information, the Angular framework related to the class and the templates. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes, yes.
Right. So now what we need to do? We need to understand, right, how to create a component, and we'll see some few small example before moving further, right? Guys, remember, we'll discuss, right, more complicated example once we start a data binding. But before now, we need to understand, right, what is Angular and all these things very thoroughly. So let me first, go to my projects folder, whatever the existing project. Let me delete all these things, not required. Okay. Then open Visual Studio Code. So once you open Visual Studio Code, then go to the folder, which folder I want to open. I want to open my project folder, Angular project folder. So this is the folder that what I select. Now, so within this folder, I will create a new project. So open the terminal. So guys, tell me how to create a new project.
ng new project now.
Right? So ng, that is Angular. New, it is going to create a new project. So I'm providing my Angular app. Any name you can give. Clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
This is the syntax for
Yes.
creating a new project. So why I'm following the Angular CLI? Because it will give you the complete structure. So just press the enter button. So once you press the enter button, it will ask you a few questions. What style sheet you want to use? I want to use the CSS. Do you want to use SSR server-side rendering? No, I don't want to use it at this point. Do you want to use any AI tool? No, I don't want to use any AI tool. So once I click, then it will try to create the complete project folder structure with the required class file, with the required CSS, HTML, TypeScript, config, route, right? Whatever is required minimum to run the application. Proper folder structure it will provide, right? And it will download the required packages which are required for Angular application. And all these things are going to be provided by Angular CLI so that will not face any kind of compatibility issues. So everything is going to be set up automatically by the Angular CLI. So it will take some time. So meanwhile, what I can do is, right, once you create the Angular project, right, we'll create one component. See, so for creating component, we have provided some syntax, right? So what syntax now? Generate component. So G generate what you want to use component. Any name you can give, you can give. So here generate component welcome you can write. Short form also you can write like GC. So if you write it generate, that is fine. If you write G also, that is fine. For component you can also write C, or if you go with the full qualified name, that is also fine. So this is how we are creating the component in Angular, right, using CLI. So you can say that project is created. So once the project is created, next what I can do is I can move to that project folder. What is that folder name? That folder name is going to be my project name. CD my Angular app, right? So now we are in the project folder, right? So you can see this is going to be my project folder. So within this project folder, I want to create an Angular component. So ng generate component and a welcome. Any name you can give, this is not an issue. So you can see once I click, so it create 4 files. And where it create this file? Now within the src app, it will create a folder with the name what I provided. So you can see, as I have mentioned, so within this src folder, we are going to work out throughout our project. So within this src folder, already this app folder is there. Within this app folder, it is creating one component folder. Welcome. Whatever the name you provided, using that name, it will create a folder. Similarly, if I want to create another folder, another component, again that component is going to be created within the app folder. And at the same time, you can see 4 file it is also creating. What are the file? Welcome specification.ts, welcome.ts, welcome.cs, and welcome.html. What are these files? So this welcome.ts, this is going to be our right actual component file. And this is welcome.specification.ts. This is going to be used in case of a unit testing. So at this point of time, we are not interested right with this welcome specification. But this is going to be our component class, and this is going to be the CSS file, and this is going to be my HTML file. So this HTML file, welcome CSS, TS, all these are going to be provided to us. And you can see this welcome.css, welcome.html, welcome.specification.ts, welcome.ts. So this is going to be our component class. So this is going to be our specification class. At this point, don't right put your brain to this class. So this is going to be your right what I can say CSS file, and this is the HTML file. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So this is what it is doing. Now, how the welcome component is used in HTML. So let us try to understand. See, creating a Angular component using Angular CLI only create the component files. but it doesn't automatically place that component on the screen. So I created the component, but don't consider that component is going to be rendered in the UI. That is not possible. For example, at this point of time, if I run the application, it will not render my welcome component. Suppose I run this one. What is the command, guys? ng sir. See, once you run this application, open this one. So at this point of time, so whatever the Angular component we created, that will never come into the picture. Automatically, nothing is going to happen. So we tell the Angular CLI, so Angular CLI will create one component class. But that component class is not going to be rendered automatically in the UI. So a component is only a definition. Angular knows that this is a component. This component is associated with this HTML template, but it doesn't have any idea right how to render. For example, if you look at this, so if you look at this welcome.ts, right here you can see that component is decorated with what?
Selector.
Selector. So this selector is nothing but what? This is going to be your custom HTML
Tag.
right? Currently, if you want to use any other custom classes, right, within this component, that class import statement you need to write here. For now, for time being, we are not interested with this import, so you can remove that one. So this is going to be what? This is going to be my template file. This is going to be my template. So template means it is going to contain all the HTML, and this is the CSS style sheets. Right? Any style sheets if you want to define, you can define within this welcome.css class. Clear?
Yes.
Right? And one more thing, right here you can see so this is my class, and this class is decorated with this component decorator. Yes or no?
Yes.
So this component decorator, or what is a component decorator? It keeps metadata to the Angular framework. Then this component decorator will provide what information? Metadata means additional information. So what information it will provide to the Angular framework? It will tell the Angular framework that this welcome is a component class. First of all, this welcome is a component class. Secondly, it will tell the Angular framework, see, if anywhere within any HTML file, if you found this app-welcome HTML tag, then please try to execute this welcome component. And within this welcome component, right, whatever the template URL we provided, please render the HTML file, or whatever the HTML we provided here, please replace that app.welcome HTML tag with this HTML element. So while the framework, right, also if this HTML file, whenever you are using, if you want to provide any style, that style you have to define here. So now when this welcome.html file is being passed, at that time it finds some interpolation, it finds some property binding, it can find some data annotation, right? Sorry, I'm saying data annotation. It is going to find some different data binding techniques. Then in that case, please read those data from this welcome component class. Now, one more thing we need to understand. So we already discussed how to create a class, but what is this export keyword and what is this import keyword? So this export keyword tell that this is a component class, and this component class can be available in other file. Apart from this class file where I'm creating this one, if you want to use this class file in other class file also, then you have to mention this export keyword. This export keyword will give access that you can use this class in other file. So when I'm saying file means any TS file, right? If you want, you can use. I will show you all this thing in our coming session, but just for now, export will give permission that this class file can be imported in other. For example, here you can say I'm using import. So and this welcome, right? What is this? This is a type decorator, right? If you go to the definition, then you will see. So this is a interface decorator, right? So that what you can see. So similarly, right, you have to remember, if I'm creating a class with the export keyword, then that class can be import using the import keyword. If I'm not using this import, sorry, export, then I cannot use import to access that. So it is a kind of a namespace, right? What you are using, but you can only use the namespace when it having this export keyword. Clear?
Panne, it is something like the public keyword. Can we?
No, public is different and this is different. Public means what? Who can access that class file? Right? Public, private, and protected means who can access. Accessing, right, is different and importing is different. If I'm declaring a class, that the class can have a multiple, right, access specifier, right? Public, private, protected. So they define where this class is available. Import means can I access that class file or not?
Okay.
Right? So both are two different things, right? Class means they are giving accessibility. Who can create an instance of that class? Who can consume the properties of that class? That what access specifier is going to tell. And the export import means where I can import this class file, whether you are going to use that class or not. Right? That is different thing altogether. Right? But this is different and access specifier is different. Clear?
Okay.
Right. Now what I'm going to do is, so this is simply a class and this is the associated right HTML. But now, right, how I can render this component, right, within my application. So how I can render this component within my application. So that what we need to understand. Can
So
anybody
should we
tell?
should we always put the selector as app followed by the name, or that app is a must, or is it okay we can change?
So you can give any name. Why I'm giving app to in rated to avoid the right in name collision. For example, any name you can give which should not be a standard HTML tag. That's what it means. If it is a standard HTML tag, that will be rendered. Here, any name you can give. Clear?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so Pranay, I have one question. So, in app.component.ts file, we have imported the component from the Angular, right? So,
Sorry.
yeah. So, we have import the component from the Angular core, right? So
Yes.
so whenever we do the import statement, so is it that will be the class
No. So
we are
this can
importing?
be, see, basically this can be a class, this can be interface, this can be a type alias, this can be a function, anything it can
Okay.
be,
So
right?
currently here component we consider as a class, or what we should consider it?
It is a alias. Clear?
Okay.
We'll discuss this decorator, right? Again in detail, what are the different types of decorator. That is a separate chapter altogether. But now it is not a exactly it is a type alias, or you can say type decorator. So type alias means not a class, not a right interface, but you can consider this is a complete JavaScript object, right? Where I'm initializing these properties. Clear? Anonymous object you can consider. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
You
So
know,
now.
the component is the decorator is a class that we can see how it is, what it does.
So this is not a class.
Implementation, go to implement.
Go to definition. So this is an interface that is inherited from the directive. Clear? This is one interface, right? And that is inherited from the directive class. So that is the reason why we are saying it's a directive. And here you can see it is having multiple properties. So type interface means it only defines type,
Yeah,
right? So
the value which we pass, where it get digested, consumed in the
sorry.
The value which we are passing JavaScript object, where it is consumed.
So this is not consumed by all. So what I'm saying, this is a metadata. So this
Yeah,
value,
I
what it
understand.
is passing, it will just give information to the Angular framework. So when you find this app.welcome HTML tag, please render this welcome.html template. And this HTML template, if it needs the CSS files, please get the CSS files from here. And also, if it needs some data and function, if it is internally calling, then they must be present here. Clear?
Pranay, I have a doubt. When we are importing the component, it import as an alias. But when we are decorated with the component, this
First
thing.
of all, you just tell me what is interface. Can I create an instance of interface?
No.
No. Then if I'm creating an object using interface means what? Technical, what is that? That is a
It's a
JavaScript object.
JavaScript. Yes.
That is what it is creating here. It's creating a JavaScript object. Right?
Okay.
Now what I need to do, right? I want to use this template what we created in my application. So first of all, what I need to do, I need to identify, right, where I need to use this template. So for example, currently which one is your root template, root component?
Yeah.
App.ts is going to be my root component. Clear? So within this component, first of all, I need to right, inject this one. So this is welcome component. I'm importing. So I can import this component. Why? Because it is created with the export keyword. If you remove this export keyword, then you can see you cannot import this one. Clear? So you should have created this as an export. So once you create export, you can import. So once you import this one, next what I need to do, I need to import this one also within this imports folder. Right? So this is going to be welcome. So what is routing? The routing we will discuss in detail. So first of all, I import this one. Right? I import my welcome component. Then within the import section, I provided this one. Right? So why I'm providing? Because now this welcome component is available right within my application. Then what is the benefit? Now benefit is that now this is my root component, and this root component is associated with which HTML file?
app.html.
Right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to update this app.html file. Getting this error. Okay. Welcome TS. Welcome. Okay, fine. Right? So this router outlet, we are not using routing, so you can remove that one. That's fine. So now what we have done so far, let us understand one more time. So we have created a custom right, a component, and we have also provided this component decorator telling that the selector, that is the custom HTML tag, is going to be up welcome. And when this HTML tag you find in the parent HTML file, then please render the welcome.html file, and this is going to be my welcome.html file. If this file need any CSS, currently it is not requiring any CSS, but later I will show you how to use this one. Then this style sheet is going to be rendered. So that what we have created. This is my welcome template. Sorry, this is my welcome component, and the associated welcome template is this one. Next, what I need to do, I want to use this app welcome within my app HTML file, right? So that now what will happen? Now when this app.welcome is trigger in trigger, then the Angular framework will look. So this app.welcome, this selector is associated with which component. So then it will come to this component class. Yes, this is the selector. This is associated with this welcome component, right? And for this welcome component, what is the template URL it define? This is the template URL. So basically, this particular section, it will be replaced with this HTML tag. But as within this app.html file, I'm using this app welcome. Then this information, right, should be linked to this app.ts. So this app.ts should know this thing, right? That I'm using this app underscore welcome. So for that purpose, what I need to do, I need to import this statement. For example, if I comment this one, see what will happen. See, if I comment this one, I'm getting the error or not? So what is saying app welcome is not a known element. If app.welcome is an Angular component, they verify that it is included in the component dot imports of this component. So particular, what is the current component? What is the component? This app.html is associated with which component? App.ts. It is telling that this is an unknown element. So if this is not known, then please import this component within the current import file. So this is a import. So first of all, I need to import, and then that component I need to specify within the import section so that the corresponding HTML file can use the selector. Clear?
Yes.
Right. So now let us try to run the application. So already my application, I think, running. Yeah. See, my Angular application already it is running or not?
Yes.
So what is happening behind the scene? Now, first of all, see, whenever the framework, right, whenever it render this after to welcome, then Angular already follow these steps. So identify the selector. So what is the selector? App.welcome. So finds the associated welcome component, right? So for this app.welcome selector, so it find out, right? This is app.welcome selector, and from this selector, it found what is the associated component. That component is going to be welcome.ts file, right? So from this component, it will load the corresponding template. What is that template? Welcome.html. So this HTML is going to be rendered here, right? Currently, it is not connecting to the welcome TS because it is not implementing any kind of a data binding techniques. But later on, if you implement, then it is going to load the data from the welcome.ts class file. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
What is a component? A component is a class, TypeScript class, decorated with the component decorator and associated with a template. Template is where we define the HTML which the user can see. Within the component class, we can define our data and logic. And the component decorator is nothing but the metadata which will give information to the Angular framework. What information it will provide? It will provide what is the associated selector, what is the associated template URL, and what is the associated style URL for this particular template. So in the root right in the root component or within the root HTML file, wherever it find this app on app-welcome tag, then what it will do? Now it will load the corresponding component and it will load the corresponding HTML file. It will render parse that HTML file, and that parsed HTML is going to be appended right wherever this app/welcome is rendered. Clear?
Panay, if we have one variable in welcome.ts, then this variable is used in that selector or within that selector.
Welcome.html file, right?
All these things we are going to discuss, right? How to access the data in the parent component, how to access the data in the nested component. Everything is going to be there, right? At this point of time, right? Don't think too much, which we are going to be discussed. So we need to go
in welcome we have properties and behavior, and this information we will firstly show in welcome.html, and then
Yes.
those things we are rendering in app.html. Is it like,
Yes.
or we can?
Yes. No. First of all, app.html is the main file which is going to be rendered. When it render this file, it will find this custom tag. Then the framework will look for this app.welcome. Is there any selector associated? If associated, then what is the component? So it find yes, this is the selector, and the selector is associated with this component class. So for this component class, what is the template? This is the template. So it will render this template, and whatever the HTML generated, that generated HTML is going to be appended here, and that complete file is going to be shown to the user.
So, Pranay, how we will debug this one? We can put it as JavaScript like debugger keyword, or
We'll discuss, right? Don't worry about such concept, right? How to debug
okay.
and all these things. We are going to discuss everything, right? But we need to go step by step. We
Okay,
are
sir.
just learning ABCD, and I cannot explain right how to create a paragraph, how to create an essay. So we'll understand all these things, but step by step. So that is the reason why, right, structured approach, right, learning the concept step by step is always important. Otherwise, you will get confusion. If I do not explain, right, what is a class, how to create a class, what is an interface, right? If I'm creating an instance of an interface, right, I mean, that is technically that is going to be an instance JavaScript. So all these things we discuss first, then I'm using this one, right? Whatever all your queries we are going to discuss one by one. So how to access the data from the template, right? For example, if you are thinking, right? So let me give you some idea, right? What type of applications we are going to discuss, right? Or develop. Again, right? After one or two sessions, right? We are going to discuss. So we are going to discuss something like this, right? This kind of applications, right? Similarly, right, you can see where I'm going to provide some input data, where I'm going to drop down list, button, right? All these things, it is going to how to get this data from the right component class. When I'm making some changes, how it will update that properties in the component class. Everything is possible, one-way binding, two-way binding. So we have not yet discussed what is binding, and if we are talking about how to implement a two-way binding and one-way binding, right? How the data is going to be flow between component to view and view to component, how we make bi-directional, all this thing, right, at this point of time doesn't make sense. We'll proceed step by step. Clear? Clear, guys? What is a component? I mean, the fundamental concept of a component. I mean, for now, you just remember what is component. It is a class which is decorated with the component decorator, and the component class going to contains data and logic, behavior, function. That component director going to tell what is the associated HTML tag, what is the associated HTML file, and what is the associated CS file. So within the HTML file, I mean within the template, we can define our UI. That template can also get data from the, right, what I can say, from the class file, I mean from your component class. So now we need to understand what is a decorator. See, a decorator in Angular is a special TypeScript feature that adds metadata. So whenever I'm using decorator means it is related to a metadata. So it is going to give some additional information about the class. If I'm decorating that class with the decorator, about the method, if I'm applying decorator within the method. So the point that what you need to remember, the decorator what I'm going to apply, it is not only meant for class. You can apply decorator with class, interface, function, property, parameter. Anywhere you can apply the decorator. And why we are applying the decorator? To give some extra information, to provide some extra information to Angular so that at runtime Angular decide what to do and how to do. In simple terms, you can consider a decorator tells Angular what a class is and how Angular should treat it. If it is a class, what type of a class is, whether it is a component, whether it is a directive, whether it is a pipe, whether it is right, some kind of a dependency injection, I mean services, what type of a class is. So that information it is going to tell to the Angular. So always the decorator start with the symbol and are placed above the item they describe. So the item can be a class, can be a method, can be a property, can be a parameter, can be an interface, right? Anything. So some of the examples, right, you can see component. So which will make a class as a component class. Directive, we'll discuss what are directive, we'll discuss what are pipe, we'll discuss what are services, right? All these things we are going to discuss in detail. We just learn one component, that is component. Again, directive is a separate chapter in our syllabus, you can see. So many things we are going to discuss, right? The component directive. Currently, we are learning the component. After this, we will understand directives. After then, we will discuss pipe. After then, we will discuss services. All these things we are going to discuss one by one. So simply, component decorator we are learning. What is decorator means? It is giving some additional information to the Angular framework. This can be decorated to a class, to a method, to a property, to a parameter as well. Clear? Clear?
Yes.
Right? So if you decorate this one to a class, that will become a component. If you decorate this one to a class, that will become a directive. If you decorate this as right to class, that will become pipe. If you decorate injectable to a class, that will become a service. So here I'm showing the example of class, but also it can be applied to method, it can apply to properties, right? All that is also possible. That's what we are going to discuss in our coming session. So what is the Angular component director? The Angular component director is the most important director in Angular. Guys, remember, every director is important, but it is more important than other director. Why? Because a Angular application is nothing but a collection of a component. Without component, no Angular application exists. Yes, without directive, without pipe, you can still create Angular application. But without component, you cannot create an Angular application. That is the reason why it is the most important component in an Angular application. This will make a class as a component. It will tell the Angular that this class is a component. It will also tell the Angular that this template is associated with this HTML. So what is the associated HTML template? Which style sheets to be applied? What right selector represents the component in the HTML. So basically, what is the custom HTML tag? That what also going to be told by the component director. We have already discussed. So let us try to understand this right in a little better manner. For example, this is going to be my Angular component class. So this is my Angular component class. So here you can see I just change, right? I just change means what? I just add a variable. So this is nothing but a variable. So what type of a data type? I have not specified anything, right, by default. So if you want, you can also use. So this is a class, so it is not allowing to declare. By default all are public, right? So you don't need to, this is a class. So you cannot use let or right const here. This is a class property. And right, by default, this class property is going to be type string, right? So this is a property, not a variable. So now what I need to do, right? I need to use, I need to understand the component role of the component decorator. See, in component decorator, right, you will find at least two things. What are the things? One is the selector and one is the template or template URL. The style sheets URL or styles, right, it is optional. If you provide, that is fine. If you ignore, that is also fine. If you ignore means what? Your HTML doesn't have any custom style sheet. If you provide it, that is also fine. But at least two things are going to be there. What are the things? What is the selector and what is the template URL? So what is this selector doing? That the selector property defines the custom HTML tag name that represents this component. So what is the custom HTML tag that represents this HTML template going to be defined by the selector? So now if I'm using this app welcome, right, HTML tag means what? I'm going to render the welcome template. Clear? Clear or not? Clear or not? Yes. Second thing is the you can say template URL. The template URL property tells Angular that where the HTML UI of the component lies. So where the HTML part of this component lies, that's what it is going to tell to the framework that this is the welcome.html file. This is the template where the UI part of this component is lying, right? Then what is style URLs, right? You can say it is an array. For example, if you are having multiple right CSS files, then you can write past them right one by one separated by command. That is the reason why it is an array. So here you can pass one or more CSS style sheets.
But for template, we cannot have array, right? We have only single, or we
How it
can.
is? No, you cannot have an array. So one component is going to be associated with one HTML template. And and that HTML file can make use of a multiple CSS file, and it's very common, right? For example, if you ever work with any .html file, then that .html file can refer to multiple CSS file, can refer to multiple JS file. That is fine, but it is not possible that one component is going to be associated with a multiple template. That's not possible. One component, one template. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? And it makes sense. For example, if I'm having multiple template URL, then how that a template is going to be rendered? Because each template, each HTML file is different. Once it render the HTML file, where what is the sequence of putting that HTML file? Which one to put first? Which one to put second? Right? That is going to completely mess your application. That is the reason why one component, one template. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So now, all right, what I need to do? I need to understand the template. Template is nothing but your URL part. For example, right? For example, here you can say I have written this one. So H2 message, and this is my welcome template. Here this variable is there. So that variable value it is going to read from here. And this is my app template. This is the main template. It is going to read by default index.html file. If you look at the index.html file, it is the first file that is going to be rendered. Here you can say app root, and this app root is associated with my main component class, so it is going to render the app.html file. So if you open app.html file, it containing this app welcome, and this app welcome selector is associated with welcome component, and this welcome component is associated with welcome.html file. So it is going to parse this HTML file. While parsing, it find that this is a interpolation, right? So as it is a interpolation, so this variable value it is going to load from the component class, and here this is the value. So this value automatically going to be rendered here, and that what you can see in the UI. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right. Now we need to understand right two more things, right? So guys, there are two different ways to define the template. One is inline template, and another one is external template. So inline template means what? The component is going to be, I mean, in this case, right, with inline template, what exactly you need to do? You need to define the HTML as a string within the component director. So within the component directive, wherever you are applying this read directive, so at that time you have, within the template you have to provide. See, if it is an external file, you have to use a template URL. If it is an external file, you have to refer to that file, and you have to provide the URL where this file is available. If it is a template, then you have to provide the HTML directly here within the component class. Right, and this is very simple, but it is not for real-time application, because right, the separation of concern, we should not merge component class with the HTML template. And in case of external template, what you need to do, you need to define right, the external URL. I mean that file is going to be somewhere else, and that file you need to refer here. And this is the recommended approach. Why it is recommended? Because of a clean separation. TypeScript is a different class. HTML is going to be stored separately. CSS is going to be stored separately. Every file having its own responsibility, and it will completely follow the separation of concern and clean responsibility principle. That is the recommended approach also when you are developing real-time applications, right? So now let us try to understand this one, right, by taking one simple application. So let me create, right, some component class to make you understand. So I'm going to create one. Let me first stop the application. Browser is still running. Okay. City. What is the project file? My Angular app. My okay. So now I'm going to create two component to make you understand this thing. So ngc component inline demo. So this is I'm creating ng generate component inline demo. I'm creating one component, right? And inside this component, this is going to be my class file. So you can see it is creating this component inline demo. So replace this code. So here you can see I'm creating this template using this symbol, right? And here template. So inline template content, this UI is written directly inside the UI template. So here you can see this is my selector. I'm not specifying any template URL. I'm specifying the template. This is going to be like the HTML content I have write directly here. The next component what I'm going to create one external component. So let me go ahead and create again this file. Again, you can see this is creating another. So this is going to my external. So in external, I have to specify the component class and the template separately. So let me start with this one. So this is going to be my external demo component class. Here you can see selector is going to be this one. Template URL is this one. So this file I need to create. This is the style set if you want. And this is my variable. I'm creating one variable which I want to display inside this template. So next what I need to do, I need to update this HTML file. So this is going to be my template. So here you can see whatever the variable I defined within this one title, that what I'm printing here. Clear?
Title is property, no, sir?
Yes, yes. Title is a property within this external demo class, and this property I'm accessing. So here you can see this is a property, and that property I'm accessing using interpolation. So what is this data binding? We'll discuss tomorrow. So, but for now, just remember whatever the variable we defined there, that variable value it is going to print here. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Now these two right whatever the what I can say. So whatever the this is my okay. Let me okay. So you can see this is my external demo. So that selector name is app external demo, and this is my inline demo. The selector name is going to be app inline demo, and these two selector I want to use in my application. So first of all, go to the app.html file, and here you can see I'm using these two selector, app inline demo and app external demo. I'm getting this error. So how to fix this error? So first of all, this selector are not available. So we need to import this selector, I mean the corresponding component class within the component dot import section of this document. So which section? App dot ts file. So within this app dot ts file, right? First of all, what component I need to use? Guys, tell me.
Inline demo
Inline
So what
inline
is the
demo
class name?
inline
Inline
demo.ts.
demo. Inline demo. So let me
Correct.
put that one here. So this inline demo is available import section of an array directive pipe. So this inline demo. But first of all, what I need to do, I need to import that one, right? Import inline demo from where? Guys, tell me from where?
the root directory of the
Dot
app.txt.
What is
Inline
that
demo
one?
from
Slash
inline hyphen demo.
Let me copy that name here. Who is going to type all this thing? Okay. So inline demo from, this is the folder name and this is the class name. This is external demo and that's what I need to pass here. Clear? So this represent the source, I mean the current directory. So in this case, this is the app directory, right? Within the app, you have to go to this external demo and inline demo folder. And from this folder, you need to refer to this one, inline demo and that external demo. Again, that file I have referred to here. And there's two more things you need to remember. So here the class name is different. What we are referring is the file name. So file name you can say inline demo, not ts. So inline hyphen demo. That's what I am providing here. External hyphen demo. Clear? So I import this to component to the app.root. So within the app.html file, I can use the corresponding selector. So when these selectors are rendered, then the corresponding component will be rendered, and the corresponding component means for this component, the inline template is going to be executed, and for this one, this external demo.html file is going to be rendered. Clear?
Yeah.
Right. So now let me run my application in G Sharp. 5000 is already in running. See, already see, I have started that application. So it is saying this is already running. Do you want to use a different port? So yes. So here you can see I'm getting a different port for my application, right? So now copy this one and run this one. So you can see inline component template, and this is going to my external component template. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is how you can run the application. So guys, next important concept what we are going to learn is data binding, right? So data binding means how you are going to define new properties, how you are going to define method within this class file, and how we can access them from our HTML file. That's what we are going to discuss next. But before that, what I need to make you understand is one important concept. That is HTML attribute and DOM properties. So HTML attribute versus a DOM property, that what we need to understand. So because this is very confusing and the people are getting very confusion, and many rate working professional are also here. So can anybody tell me what is the difference between this HTML attribute and the DOM properties? Have you ever heard these particular things? What is HTML attributes and what are DOM properties?
Yes.
Then tell me what is there? What is this?
So in tag, like when we are using, like if you are creating any heading and then there we are specifying height, width,
Correct.
and for property, a DOM is like a header and then paragraph, then we have div and other HTML tag. We have header body.
So in this case, right? So in this case, you can say these are nothing but HTML, right? Tag. Yes or no?
Yes.
Everything, whatever I'm showing here, it is a HTML tag. So now, what is the difference between, if you understand? So here you can say this input is my HTML tag, and this ID, type, value, these are one attribute of this, what I can say, HTML element. Correct? ID is
Correct.
one attribute, type is one attribute, value is one attribute. So this HTML attributes and DOM properties means what? Now whatever the source code we have written here, these are nothing but attribute of this HTML. So this HTML, this is one HTML element, and for this HTML element, this is one attribute ID. Another attribute is type, another attribute is value. And what are the DOM properties? Now for this HTML attribute, internally JavaScript will create one object, and that object is going to be the DOM object. If this is not clear, don't worry. Let us try to understand this concept, right? Step by step. So one of the most confusing and common confusing concept you can consider for the beginners, fresher, even the experienced web developer is the lack to understand the clarity between HTML and DOM. DOM means a document object model, right? So why I'm saying, because whenever they start working with as a web developer, so they're specifically working with the elements, attribute, properties, styles, classes. Many things are going to be there which they want to understand, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you explain this concept by taking one application. So I'll explain what is exactly this step by step. So let us try to understand this one. So to understand what exactly DOM and what exactly HTML attribute and DOM properties, you have to understand how a HTML file is going to be processed by the browser. So for example, I created one file, right? I created, so you can see this is my file and I just set this file. So where I set this file on my machine, you can see I have created one file, so HTML DOM. Right, so this is one file I created. Any name you can give. Otherwise, right, I just provided a name like this. So my HTML basic dot HTML. So I just set this one. Right, so that's what I have saved. So what exactly happening? The browser read the HTML file as a plain text. So when the browser going to read this HTML file, so it will read this HTML file as a plain text file. So how it is going to read? It will read the HTML file as a plain text file. So at this point, so in step 1, HTML as plain text. So try to understand. And HTML file as its pure core, it is a plain text file. When the browser loads an HTML file, it doesn't immediately display. Okay, let me copy this one. The MS Paint so that I don't need to come to see. So what is happening in step 1? Please try to observe. Now, when the browser load our HTML file, it doesn't immediately display the UI element or it is going to create the interactive component. So when it load for the first time, it is not going to display the UI element immediately. Instead, the browser perform a structured internal process. So internally, it is going to do some kind of a processing. So what is that processing? And that processing is to convert that text file into dynamic runtime model so that the user can exist. So when the browser load this HTML file, at this point, there is no UI exist, no input box, no drop down, no text box, nothing, no JavaScript object is yet created, no DOM right object exists, nothing is going to be done. So at this point of time, it simply read this as a plain text file. Clear? So what is the step 1? HTML read our HTML file as a plain text file. Clear?
Yes.
Right. So the step 2 is going to be HTML parsing. So what is HTML parsing? See, parsing is the process by which browser converts the raw HTML into a structured internal DOM representation. So parsing means what? 3 things it is going to do internally. What is that? What is those 3 things? Now reading the HTML text character by character. So it load the complete HTML. Now parsing is started. Parsing started means it is going to read the complete HTML character, right? Whatever the text you have written, it is going to read one by one. So once it start reading, then it is going to understand what HTML tag they represent. For example, if it read this one, input ID and this thing. So it understand, okay, this is going to represent one input element. So I have to create one input element. And this input element going to have a 3 attribute. One is ID, name input, type equals to this and value equals to this. So first of all, it will read this HTML text character by character. Clear? So basically whatever the HTML I have written here, so all these HTMLs are going to be read character by character, understanding what each tag represents. So basically what is this HTML tag, what is this head tag, what is this body tag, what is this h2, what is this input, what is this button, what is this PR, what is this P, so what is this script, right? Every tag it is going to understand, right? I mean what exactly it means. So once it understand, it will convert into browser right usable object. So what is this browser usable object? I'll make you understand in some time. So basically, first of all, HTML parsing is going to be there. So parsing is nothing but 3 things: reading, understanding, and converting. For example, if this is the input element, then it will understand, right? It will read this one, it will understand, okay, I have to create an input element. And this input element going to have 3 attributes. What are these? ID, type, and value. These attributes provide configuration data, right, for the object creation. So attributes are treated strictly as metadata HTML. So whatever the attribute we defined here, these are nothing but you can consider metadata of this input element. So at this point of time, object is not yet created, right? Right. So understanding. So this is fine. So HTML parsing means it is converting into browser usable objects, right? So that's fine. So now once it understand this thing, right? Once it read and understand this thing, then it will create the DOM. So this creation of a DOM object means what? Now after the parsing, the browser creates a JavaScript objects in memory to represent each element. So what exactly it means? Now at this point of time, Then for each element, whatever we show here, this HTML element, for each element, it is going to create one DOM object. DOM object means a document object model object. And that DOM object is not related to our, right, whatever the JavaScript object we created here, this is a different. This is JavaScript code what we are writing. And that DOM object is going to be created by the browser internally. Right? And for each element, for each HTML element, it is going to create a DOM object, that corresponding DOM object. And that is going to be created at runtime in memory. You cannot see that one. That DOM object you cannot see. But yes, that DOM object you can access within the code using JavaScript. You cannot see, but you can access. Right? And this DOM object is going to be created in a tree-like structure. Right, tree-like structure. I will show you that tree-like structure. So the point that what you need to remember, DOM objects are created by the browser, not by the developer written JavaScript. So whatever the JavaScript code we have written here, this is for our internal purpose. This JavaScript code has no relation with the DOM object creation. So DOM object is going to be created by the browser. When it is going to create it, once the parsing is done, once it understands what are the right, HTML elements to be created, and for each element, what are the associated attributes is there, what is the default value of those associated attributes. Once it clearly understand this thing, then that object creation process will start. And what type of object creation process? DOM object creation. So who will create this DOM object? The browser will create this DOM object. Right? Then what this DOM object is going to contain? Right? This DOM object is going to contain the object in memory, that the JavaScript object in memory. For example, if I am having this input element, right? You can see input ID equals to this, type equals to this, value equals to this. Then the browser internally will create one DOM object. That DOM object structure is like this. So what is the input element? That name, object name, ID, type, value, disabled. So currently it is not disabled. So what is the default value of this object? Also, that's what it is going to create. So basically, internally, for this input HTML element, the browser will create one corresponding DOM object. So when it will create once the parsing is done. Clear? Clear?
Yes.
Right. So technical definition, if you understand, DOM stands for document object model. This DOM is a tree-like structure of a JavaScript object. Tree-like structure of a JavaScript object created by the browser that represents the entire HTML page in memory. For example, I have created this one. Okay, let me open this using Google Chrome. So this is my HTML file, right? That file is being generated. So now, if you press F12, right? If you go to element, so this is nothing but your DOM representation, your HTML type structure. So here you can see this is your style. So what I can say, this is nothing but it looks like HTML, but this is the DOM representation of your HTML. Then you might have one question, sir, why they have not provided a DOM object here? Because that is not user friendly. So this is user friendly. They are providing this one, but internally for each element they are creating a structure that is parent tree-like structure. So one right inside like this they have created. So this is going to be a DOM-like structure. JavaScript object, real object, not text, created by the browser, not by the you, represents the entire HTML page. So complete HTML page they represent here and stored in memory, used for rendering and output. So you cannot see this one. So this is going to be your DOM-like structure. So clear why DOM exists. So now the question is, so as we have already this HTML elements which can render, right? Why they are creating this DOM object? Why they not directly render this thing? Right? That might be the next question. Sir, why they are creating this DOM object internally? Why not they render the page directly from this HTML? The reason is, right, we need fast UI objects, we need event handling, we need dynamic data changes, we need to access the script dynamically, we need complete dynamic behavior. For example, you want a text box. So when this page load, right, currently you can see that the text box value is Pranay. I want to update this text box and I want to pass that updated value to the server. Then that dynamic value, how I can pass and how I can update. So I need that updated and dynamic value at runtime. So basically, whatever the HTML attribute we define here, this HTML attribute, they can only give the static value or fixed value. At any given point of time, if you access this HTML attribute, I'm not talking about the DOM properties. So guys, remember the DOM property and the HTML attribute, both are two different things. When I access the HTML attribute, he will always give me this value pranay. When I access the HTML attribute, he will always give me this fixed value. Attribute values are never changed. Attribute value will never change. But this DOM property value, that is going to be changed. For example, now, so pranay is there. I just update this value to route and then click here. Now you can see here two things. So DOM property value, it is showing route, but HTML attribute value, it is showing pranay. So now within this code, you can see I have created something like this. See, DOM property value I can access using input.value property. So here, what is input? So here you can see input is going to be this one, right? For this input element, I can access that input element I get by ID. So here, this is my ID accessor. So using this ID, I can access. So this input represent this one. And here I'm accessing that value. So this is going to be DOM property. And how to access the attribute value? Now I have to use this get attribute. So input.get attribute. So when I access the get attribute dot value, it is always going to give me the attribute value which is initially set. So whatever the value initially set, pranay. So every time you run the application, you will get pranay. And this DOM means this is the dynamic and or you can say this value it is coming from the DOM object which is created at runtime, and that DOM object value you can change, right, as per your requirement. If I'm typing something into this text box, that DOM property value is going to be, but HTML value they never ever update, right? That what you need to remember. So clear? Clear, guys? So the first thing that what you need to remember, DOM, right? We are using for fast update to access the dynamic data, runtime data. Attribute, they are going to be static, right? So what are HTML elements?
I have one question.
Yes.
So value of the HTML element that will be always be constant, right? It won't be changed. So only DOM value will be changed when we make the changes on the UI.
You have to remember two things. That same HTML, right? Whatever the HTML element we are creating, what you are accessing? Are you accessing the attribute or are you accessing the property?
Okay.
Getting? If you are accessing the attribute mix, it is always going to give you the initial fixed value. If you are accessing the value from the DOM property, right? Whenever I'm saying attribute means it is HTML attribute, which is initially created. And whenever I'm saying DOM property means you are accessing from the dynamic object which is being created for that particular HTML element. So in this case, this is my HTML red element. So from this HTML element, if I access attribute value for this input element attribute value, always it is going to give me this value from it. But for this HTML element, it is going to create one DOM object, and that DOM object is always going to contain the updated value. Then how to access the attribute value and how to access the updated value? Just call this value property, which is going to return you the DOM property value. And if you want to get the attribute value, you have to use this get attribute method. Clear?
Yes, clear. Thank you.
Right.
Thank
So,
you.
right. So what is an HTML element? Let us try to understand. See, an HTML element is the runtime result of HTML parsing. So once we do the parsing, then it is going to create an HTML element. Then that HTML element, right, going to contain two information. What are the information? Now, how it is going to be represented in the UI and the corresponding DOM. So basically, you can say that this is going to mean right UI part, and this UI is not created from our right this HTML file. So this HTML file is being parsed. Once this HTML file is parsed, HTML right for each right HTML tag, it is going to create one HTML element, and that HTML element is going to be rendered in the UI. Don't consider that whatever the HTML code we have written here, source code or this tag are going to be rendered in the UI. No, this tag, HTML tag, are converted into HTML element. That HTML element is going to be rendered in the UI. Plus, that HTML element, it is not only going to contain the rendering part, but also it is going to contain the corresponding DOM objects. For example, right? So technically you can say these are two different separation of the same entity. Don't consider that it is creating two different entity. It is not creating two different entity. One entity going to represent two representation. One part, it is going to display what the user is going to see. Another part, it is going to create one DOM object which you can access using JavaScript code. And in this case, you can see one part I can see here, the HTML element, what it is showing, that is fine. But at the same time, I have also created some JavaScript code which can access this DOM object. Clear? Clear?
Yes.
Right. Now, let us try to understand, right? So, for example, if I'm using this one button ID, btn class primary, this is click me. So, what is this? What is this button? So, this is going to be the element type. So, what do you mean by element type? Now, it tells the browser what kind of an element to create and determine the default behavior, default styling, and the type of a DOM object created. So, ID button is what? Now, this is an HTML. Just tell me, ID is going to be one HTML attribute. Class is going to be an HTML attribute. So, how you can access this button using ID selector. So what type of a class you are applying to this button? Class primary I'm applying. What is click me? The content of this button that is going to be visible in the UI. So basically what exactly it means. Now once you have this HTML tag, and for this HTML tag, it is going to create one HTML element. And that HTML element is going to be rendered in the UI. You can see this click me. And for this click me UI element, the corresponding DOM object is also going to be there. And using that DOM object, you can access the right. You can access that using your JavaScript, right? So what are HTML attribute? Then if you might be one question, sir. If I'm going to deal with HTML DOM property, right? And HTML DOM is being used for rendering the data, then whatever I'm showing in the UI, that is nothing but the HTML that is going to the DOM object. Then then what is the use of this attribute? So why I'm setting this value? Now this is for the initial setup. So initial setup means what? Now whatever the ID type value we provided, this ID type value, this type text value, right? All these properties you can dynamically change, right? But when it is going to be rendered for the first time, what should be the initial value for these properties or these attributives, right? That needs to be created in the DOM object. That is what going to be set by the HTML attribute. So HTML attribute is basically going to provide the information. Using this information, the DOM object is going to be created by the browser. So what is the default ID? This one. What is the type text? What is the value? So using this attribute, right, of this input HTML tag, it is going to create the DOM object with this value. So by default, when you run, so whatever the right property, whatever the attribute value you specified here, the same value can be available within the DOM object. For example, in this case, Prana, now click. So here I'm getting both values same. But now if I change this value, right, then it is going to be updated in the DOM object, not in the HTML attribute. Clear? Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us try to understand one more time. One more time. So this is my input element. Name, right, ID, type, value are going to be. Input is the tag type, ID type and value are the attribute, and name, input, text and pronoun are the value. So here the browser encounter How many attributes? 3 output. ID, type, and value. These are the corresponding value. All 3 are HTML attributes. So at this point, consider these are HTML attributes, not DOM objects. So during HTML parsing, the browser performs the following steps. So what are the steps? Now the browser reads each attribute from the HTML source code. So in the HTML source, whatever the attribute you specified, each attribute it is going to read. The browser creates a DOM object representing the element, right? Input element. For this particular input element, it is going to create a DOM object. The object is going to be HTML input element, right? That object, one object you can consider, it is going to create. Then once the DOM object is created, the browser initializes the DOM properties. Again, that object means that object is going to be this properties. So these properties are going to be initialized with the default attribute values. Whatever the attribute value you specified here, using this attribute values, the DOM object properties are going to be initialized. So whatever the attribute name you provided here, that is going to be the same most of the time in the DOM object. And whatever value, initial value you provided here, the same value also going to be there in the DOM properties. But those DOM properties values, you can later update and modify and change. How to update, modify, change, that's what we are going to discuss with the Angular. But the thing that what you remember, right? HTML attributes are only used to configure the DOM objects at creation time. Once the DOM object is created, there is no need for HTML attribute and they are not coming into the picture anymore. Clear? Clear?
Yeah.
Right. So DOM properties, they are exist in memory, are created by the browser as part of the DOM, reflect user interaction and script object, directly drive UI rendering. So basically, they are going to be created in memory when the browser parse, and using that DOM object, right? We can do some kind of interaction. So you can modify the data, you can update the data, right? That is what it is going to. That is going to be handled by the DOM, right? So let us try to understand the difference, right? So first of all, we have already discussed. So HTML attribute to define how an element is created. So it will read once, used during HTML parsing, provide initial configuration for DOM, do not track runtime state. So it will be only read once. So once the uh, browser load the HTML file, at that time it is going to read. It is going to be used during HTML parsing. So once it read the initial configuration, then it is going to create the DOM object with the provided data. And this HTML attribute then do not store the runtime data. If I'm doing some changes, then those changes information they are not going to store. They always store the data what we provided at the time of creation. Clear?
Yeah.
Right? So basically, how you are going to create the element, that what it defines. How you are going to, how that element is going to be behaved at runtime, that is going to be defined by the DOM properties. So exist at runtime. So at runtime, they are going to be created by the browser, continuously updated. If you are moving, updating the data, then that updated data they are going to store. Reflect user interaction. So if you click on the button, if you want to do some drop down changes, right? They are going to handle such kind of a behavior, control the so basically it is going to completely control the UI behavior. So attributes are defined by HTML, whereas properties are defined by DOM. So in attribute in HTML we call them attribute, but in DOM we call them properties. Attributes are basically used to define the DOM properties during object creation. Once DOM initialization is done, attributes have no further role. DOM property value can change, whereas attribute values remain static unless explicitly modified. Runtime behavior is exclusively managed by DOM properties. Clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone having any question? This 5 point is the summary of what we discussed. So attribute are defined by HTML, properties are defined by DOM. Attribute initialize the DOM properties during right element creation. So during when I'm saying element creation means right DOM object creation. Clear? So this DOM object is also part of our HTML element. Once DOM initialization is complete, attributes have no further role. DOM property value can change, whereas HTML attribute value remains static unless explicitly modified. Frontend behavior is exclusively managed by the DOM properties only. And this example we have already discussed. Clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
This is
have one question.
yes, please. Now it's a time for the question answer. Anyone having any question, they can ask.
Yeah, not related to this, but related to component and module. Earlier we used to have a module